All right, now this slide you'll write 5 facts about. Number 1, the artist is Filippo Brunelleschi. Brunelleschi, and he created this dome after spending time learning about ancient Roman construction. He looked at a simple number of ratios, 1 to 2 and 1 to 3. He also used shapes like circles and squares in his building plans. And he constructed round rather than Gothic arches as well. He also used classical columns instead of Gothic piers for support. Now let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit more in detail. Now Brunelleschi, he worked on the dome from 1420 to 1436, so that's a 16-year period. He died in 1446 before the lantern. This is the lantern at the very top. This kind of holds everything together. It's a very important piece in this structure. The lantern added some weight, but was necessary for the overall design for it to work properly. Now, according to the art historian Vasari, who we've talked about before, Ghiberti's political connections won him a commission to work with Brunelleschi on the dome for equal credit and equal pay. Brunelleschi found fault in Ghiberti's work and his ideas, but no one listened to his protests. Ghiberti was finally removed from the project when Brunelleschi was sick in his bed and was refusing to give advice on the project. Ghiberti was allowed to keep his salary even after being removed from the project. Brunelleschi discarded traditional building methods and he devised new ones. He also invented a lot of the machinery that was necessary for the job. Okay, he invented machines that weren't even in existence yet to make this work. So let's go ahead and look at a few other angles. Let me just go ahead and make this image a little bit bigger. You can see the beautiful cityscape in Florence as well. Now, from this angle, you can't see the baptistry. The baptistry is right over here to the right. Here's another view. This is from a street angle. The overview, the overall height of the dome is over 100 feet, which it has a diameter of 138 feet. Brunelleschi learned from looking at the Pantheon in Rome, when he was in Rome, that a dome could be built that would span an opening of the width needed for the Florence Cathedral. And we're going to have to study Roman architecture because the Pantheon is such a fascinating building to look at. I mean, it is still in good condition after over 2,000 years of age. That's phenomenal, okay? And it has a dome on it. Now, the octagonal drum, the drum is this base piece that it sits on, and it's octagonal shaped. It was built with wooden centering like what was used in the Middle Ages. Brunelleschi's solution, which he illustrated with a model of a 1 to 12 scale, he made a smaller model, was to follow a horizontal construction plan based on a system of vertical ribs. So here are the vertical ribs that you see, okay? And primary ribs were placed at each of the 8 corners of the octagonal drum. So there's 8 of these ribs that go all the way around. He built 2 thin shells instead of 1 single thicker one, which actually helped lessen the weight on the dome. The walls were built at a steep angle and rose to a full 58 feet before needing support from below, okay? As a result, the dome was slightly more pointed at the top than rounded like the Pantheon in Rome, but that's okay. His design made the dome more stable as it reduced the outward thrust around the dome's base. Brunelleschi anchored the structure at the top with that heavy lantern that you can see right here. This lantern, although adding weight to the dome, has the curious effect of stabilizing the entire structure. So without the pressure of its weight, the ribs had a tendency to tilt outward from the center, spreading at the top. Now, in this next image, we see a hospital. This is known as the Hospital of the Innocents. This is another structure, an architectural structure that Brunelleschi designed. And this is in Florence as well. The Hospital of the Innocents is a true expression of Brunelleschi's design. He began work on this project shortly before he accepted the commission for the dome, so we kind of worked on them side by side. The basic element of its design, a series of round arches, and again, he's going back to ancient Greek and ancient Roman construction with the curved arches, okay? The basic element is a series of these arches supported by, these are slender columns, okay, across the front, and framed by pilasters that carry a flat horizontal entablature. It appears to have been inspired either by the Church of San Miniato al Monte or by the baptistry of the Florence Cathedral, which were both Romanesque buildings. The hospital expresses quite a different style from its possible medieval prototypes. The stress on horizontals and the symmetry of its design, if you drew a line down the middle, basically what's on the right is what's on the left, combined with the use of classical elements. These capitals, you can't see them, but let me see. Yeah, this is a different building. The capital is what's on top of the column, okay? They're Corinthian in design, and we'll learn more about that, as well as windows topped by pediments. And the windows here are topped by pediments. The pediments are these little triangular shaped forms on top of the windows that go across the very top of the structure. All right, now, in this next image, we have the Pazzi Chapel. And this he began around 1440. He completed in the 1460s. Now, it was completed after Brunelleschi had died, so another architect took this commission after he died. Now, the exterior probably does not reflect Brunelleschi's original design, as the narthex, or the front of this chapel, admirable as it is, seems to have been added as an afterthought, perhaps by the sculptor architect Maiano. The narthex is the portico or the lobby. The portico is the porch or the lobby of an early Christian architecture. It was separated from the nave. The nave is the main body of the church, and was reserved for those who were not admitted amongst the congregation. So people who weren't Catholic, they could come into the portico, but they could not go beyond the narthex or the portico into the nave. Behind the narthex stands one of the first independent buildings of the Renaissance to be conceived basically as a central plan structure. So when we look at the floor plan, this is a central plan structure. Everything is symmetrical. If you drew a line down the middle and through either a vertical axis or a horizontal axis, the building's going to be symmetrical. That's called central plan architecture. It could be a rectangle, it could be a square, it could be a circle, okay? All right. Now, although this floor plan is rectangular rather than square or round, all emphasis has been placed on a central dome-covered space. And this little implied circle right here, that's where the dome is. The short barrel-vaulted sections that brace the dome on two sides appears to be no more than incidental appendages. So here's a view of the interior of the Pazzi Chapel. To end our conversation about Brunelleschi, I would like to mention he was the most renowned architect of his time, but he did not participate in the increase of palace building in Florence that experienced that was experienced in the late 1430s and the late 1440s. This was a testament to the soundness of the Florentine economy and the affluence and the confidence of its leading citizens. They had money to build new palaces. He did submit a model for a new palace for Cosimo de' Medici. Again, Cosimo, as you remember, is a powerhouse and finances a lot of the early Renaissance. But Cosimo did not accept his plan. And the reason why, he thought it was too imposing, it was too over the top, it was too glamorous, it was too fancy. And he felt like he needed a nice palace, but it still needed to be simple, humble, so that the so that the citizens of Florence, the citizenry, would not feel like he was too far above them. And it was important politically for Cosimo to be loved by all. All right. He wanted to feel approachable by all. So he didn't want to. His father taught him that. His father taught him not to wear too fancy a clothes, to always stay humble in the eyes of the people that you serve. The next artist that we're going to look at is Masaccio. All right, and we've talked about Masaccio, and we looked at a video, the Holy Trinity, the mural that he painted in the Santa Maria Novella church, and it was the image of Jesus on the cross with God the Father behind him, and Mary and John the Baptist on each side of him, and then the two donors who paid for the mural. And it was, remember, the barrel vaulted ceiling. It was the first example of linear perspective, one of the first examples of linear perspective being used in a painting or a fresco. Now, his name is Tommaso di Ser Giovanni di Mon. Now, he was nicknamed Masaccio, and Masaccio translates to sloppy Tom, okay? According to Vasari, he seemed to neglect everything, including his own appearance, in favor of his art. So in 1422, he enrolled in the Painters Guild, and in 1424, he joined the Company of St. Luke, a lay confraternity consisting mostly of artists. Masaccio was presumed to have been taught by Marcellino de Panicali, who had worked in the International style. Masaccio was only 27 years old when he died. We learned that before, but he contributed so much to the development of a new style in such a short time. That's why he's important. He worked for 6 years and understood the innovations of the great contemporaries such as Donatello and Brunelleschi, and introduced into painting new possibilities of both form and content. He truly assimilated the innovations of Giotto and developed them into his new style. And even though Giotto lived 200 years before him, he had the paintings of Giotto to look at, and those paintings taught him. So he learned the lessons from Giotto through his paintings, okay? By the time of his death, he had become the most powerful and innovative painter of his generation. And here again, we have the Holy Trinity. Now, we've watched a video about this painting, so you understand it to some degree. Again, this is in the Santa Maria Novella, and it uses, and that's a church in Florence, it uses only new perspective, the only new perspective system that was invented by Brunelleschi, but also the new architectural forms that were established by Brunelleschi again, because Brunelleschi went to Rome. He looked at the ancient structures. The composition is on two levels of unequal height. Above is the barrel vaulted chapel that you see here. The Virgin Mary and St. John are on each side of Christ. Mary is looking out toward the viewer as she gestures her hand toward Christ, while St. John depicts an attitude of grief. Christ's arms are supported by God the Father, who's behind him, while the dove, right here, this little white bird, is a symbol of the Holy Spirit, and it rests on Christ's halo.